So just as a reminder, we do record and encourage you to be on screen with us and participating fully. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, as always, go ahead and turn your camera off. But as you're here, I just ask that you be present and open and engage in the conversation. This is going to be a working session. So more voices that are included. We kind of wanted this opportunity to just be able to practice and build and collaborate together. So we hope you'll join us in that. Just as a reminder, our mission is to support, promote, and advocate for fine arts education that benefit all Missourians. So we are glad that you are here and hope that you pass along the message to colleagues and friends that may be interested in becoming an ally with us and joining in with us in these network meetings. And we're looking closely at this arts across the curriculum continuum to kind of talk through how there's a variety of different ways to incorporate the arts, arts integration being one type of strategy, and that is equitably teaching both the art form standard, the fine art standard, and the content standard you're working on. So the work that we're going to do today is really going to help us take things back to our colleagues, our friends, our classrooms, and really start thinking about how we can align these standards to build and create truly arts integrated lessons. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and just hand it right off to our presenters today, Katie and Stephen. Thanks for joining us again for a second time to building our connecting standards.
Yeah, thank you. As you can see, I'm in my messy music room and Steve is in his messy art room, although his looks better than mine. Just so we can be on separate screens and if we needed to split, but I am more than fine if we all work together. What we're working on today is standards alignment, which is not very exciting, but if we can come up with good standards that align, we can create really worthwhile projects across the board. I'll give you the link to the program. If you weren't here last week, last month, we talked about how arts integration with standards alignment is something that we can think of more of as a jelly roll than a cupcake, meaning that when we create standards and we create lessons, we want things that actually all intertwine with themselves and that one cannot go without the other. So the jelly roll. So it's not just enhancing a lesson and making it a little nicer. It's actually fulfilling more than one standard simultaneously. And in order to do that, one of the strategies we've learned is actually taking two standards and putting them together. We will call the ones that come from subjects that aren't arts, we will call those content standards, and then ours will be called the arts standards. And I'm assuming most of us are arts educators. However, if you wouldn't mind in the chat putting whether you're an administrator, retired, if you feel comfortable with the arts. Now, what I have here is kind of a template that we can use. What I do first is come up with, I look at the standards, or I ask teachers to give me standards that they are challenged with, and then we look at them and consider what we can do with them. And I was just looking at this one last evening. Steve and I are K-5 educators, but we're gonna experiment with some middle school today, just because I think that there's probably some people that are more familiar with that area, and see what we can do with it. See, I see a middle school teacher right there, Joan. That's great. So I found this content standard. Apply physics principles to design a solution that minimizes the force of an object during a collision and develop an evaluation of the solution. Notice that I have highlighted all of the verbs, and I like to make content verbs blue and arts verbs red. And you'll see in a moment how the visual can help us create the big lesson seed standard. So just out of curiosity, you can either unmute or type in the chat, what, off the top of your head, what arts area do you think this would work well with for you? And there is no wrong answer. But apply physics principles to design a solution that minimizes the force of an object during a collision and develop an evaluation of the solution.
And designing a solution kind of speaks to me as far as like art connections in some way. We might be able to find something in that part of it.
From the design aspect. Yeah. What I saw here for my person, and I think that would be a good one to explore, is the a visual arts standard. For me, I saw the potential of a dance standard, thinking of choreography and moving and not running into each other and using that as an opportunity. So I found this one, collaborate as an ensemble to refine dances by identifying that work and does not work in executing complex and sequences and formations. Solve movement problems to dances by testing options and finding good results. Document self-improvement over time. As you can see that there are some words that come together, as well as there are some words that are a little bit different. The design, well, the dance standard has more of a lower cognitive level in the sense that identifying and finding. But with the collaborate and the testing and the refining and solving, you can move it up the cognitive level. Here we have design, develop, and apply. And of course, apply is not the highest of cognitive levels, but design certainly is. And develop can go either way too. So what you do is you take that information, and it's simpler than you think. You basically want to keep the language of both. So you don't need to necessarily change the wording. You just need to take all of that wording and put it into one standard. And so this is something that I kind of came up with last night. And literally, I'm pretty much using all of the language, just adapting it a little bit. Collaborate as an ensemble to refine dances by applying physics principles to identify what works and does not work in executing complex patterns, sequences, and formations, and design a solution that solves movement problems to dances and minimizes the force of an object during a collision, i.e. one body into another. Develop an evaluation that can be used to test options and find good solutions. Document self-improvement over time. So as you can see, what I've done is I've used the vocabulary from both of them and mixed it together. So it's not like all red and then blue, but they intertwine with each other. So that in order to fulfill this huge standard, you have to incorporate both science and dance to make it all work. And as far as what would this lesson look like, I have no idea. It could be anything. When you create a lesson seed, you're not trying to create a lesson idea. You're trying to create a seed that can be planted into someone else's mind and hopefully spark growth in another area. Looking at that, I don't know, we don't necessarily have any dance specialists here, although I think, Lauren, you have some dance background.
Cool.
Off of the top of your head, would this inspire a lesson? Maybe, maybe not. If you do have any thoughts, please share.
I do. And I think, like you were saying, it's not necessarily, it's just giving you kind of that initial start, but then to be able to say like, oh, maybe I could take this to the PE teachers and we could work something out, or let me go. It kind of just opens the door for a conversation with other people in your building. And typically what I have found with something like that, when you're like, hey, I've got this crazy idea about dancing through blah, blah, blah. Most people kind of feed off that energy and they're like, yeah, let's do it. So then it's like kind of what we're doing here, rather than you processing it and developing it on your own, it then becomes this collaborative experience for everybody, which is just always really fun to watch and engage in.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to consider is that as arts integration specialists or people that desire to do arts integration, that we want to get to the point where we're inviting people into the process, not just handing them lessons, but letting them be a part of it, which to some educators is very overwhelming, um, because you're starting from scratch a lot of times, and that's okay. Also, this is language that anyone will understand if they've had to sit through a lot of boring standards meetings. Like, this is our language, and when we can come back to this and show an administrator we are fulfilling this, it validates it. It's also a wonderful thing to come back to when you want to create assessments. So when you're creating assessments, you can say, what was the goal here? Um, and a lot of times in arts integration, I know I personally go off in directions, veer off in directions, but if I can come back to this wording, I can remember, oh, this is what our goal is. It is to create, is to design solutions that help, by using physics to help create a safer and more interesting choreography, something like that. Let me show you another
Can I
one.
say, I'm sorry, I wanted to just say something about that before you go away from the slide.
Please do.
Like, it was just something that I thought of, which I don't know, other people may or may not find interesting, but just the idea of the movement and the impact and all of that. Like, I know we had mentioned dance and using a dance standard, but for some reason I was thinking of like stunt men or stunt people for movies and how they have to do like play like fake fighting techniques or something. Like, it's choreographed, nobody actually gets hurt, but there's the appearance of an impact without actually hurting another actor, or like, just when we were thinking of ideas, like I was like thinking about how on the stage you make it look like there's an impact or a punch or something like that, but not actually. I don't know. That was just something that came to mind.
Add an
Well,
element of drama for sure.
yes. Well, and also, the idea is not necessarily to bring content standards into a dance studio, but to bring the idea of dance into a sixth grade science class. And yes, they would totally get into choreographing fights.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great idea. And Steve is the idea guy. I I do the boring stuff, and then he comes up with the awesome ideas. Now, here's another one. Okay. I find Missouri history is challenging to do sometimes. Describe how people in Missouri preserve their cultural heritage. So, this is a third grade standard. You're looking at, um, something that we would talk about, but right off the bat, you can see that there's a lot of ways to work in the arts here. For me, I chose a theater one, um, and use personal experience and knowledge to make connections to community and culture in a drama theater work. Because I mean, we're from Missouri, and so we'll have personal experiences, but also we can explore different Missouri playwrights, and and possibly even create something of our own to to um, to share Missouri heritage, since we are Missourians. Well, most of us are. And so this was what I came up with. The students will make connections to community and culture in a drama theater work by a Missouri playwright by describing how the work preserves the state's cultural heritage using personal experience and knowledge. So it could be more of an analyzing thing where they look at a play from a Missouri playwright and see how they see Missouri in it. Or it could be something even where they create a play, and they are the Missouri playwright, and they're reflecting upon that. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go through it. Again, we aren't to the fun part yet. We're making the foundation for the fun part, so it will be meaningful and useful to the classroom. So here are the steps to
Katie,
align
really-
them.
Oh, sorry, really quick. I see
Oh,
that Vicki's got her hands up, so I just want to make sure she has a chance to speak on that if she wants.
Steve, yeah, thank you. I don't mind having someone else talk. Go for it.
I recently took a group of students to see the mural, the Thomas Hart Benton mural at the Capitol.
Oh, yes.
And not only did they look, but then each group got into, they just got into the mode and interpreted through tableaus. We had tableaus where they actually just had to stand still, and then we gave the signal, and then they had a living tableau which included dance, movement, mime, different auditory sounds. It was wonderful. All this, the mural is on the Capitol website. The complete mural is on the website for any teacher who wants to use this as a prep to go to see the mural, or as a activity in their classroom.
Now you're talking specifically of the one that's in that room, right? That just,
Right.
oh my gosh, yeah. My dad
Now-
was a state representative, and I can still remember when I was a kid and got to just go sit in that room. I loved it.
Just make sure it's only open on certain days now. So you better call ahead and make sure that it's open the day that you're going to bring your classroom to see the mural.
That's good to know. All right, thank you. Let's go through the steps of aligning these standards. Again, Steve and I probably focused on this for about 8 weeks just to get the idea of it. So it might feel a little weird to do it right now, and still it makes my brain hurt a little bit. But I've noticed that when I do it with a group of people, I enjoy it a lot more. And then we have something really great to work with. So it's kind of like gardening. And if you do the part you don't like, you get the part that you like. I don't garden. Steve does, but I won't do it because I don't like doing all the weeding and stuff. But this is what we're kind of doing: the planting, the weeding, all this stuff. One, find a content standard you want to align. Usually you can ask teachers, or you can go to the priority standards. Often it'll be, I just ask, what is something you hate teaching? What is something that you get bored teaching? Or what is something that every time you teach it, it just doesn't work? There aren't connections. Some are very easy to do. Some are tricky. I've found that like math ones are pretty straightforward, and they are a challenge to align. But social studies and science and ELA usually work pretty well. And math is not impossible. It's just there are some that are easier than others. What you do is you highlight the verbs, because what you're trying to do is find verbs that connect with each other. And I like to make arts red and the content blue. And then you consider the goal of the standard that you're looking at and what the cognitive level is. I use the Bloom's taxonomy to kind of give me an idea of what that is. We had this chart that has multiple choices to look at. And if you were here last time, you got to see this. But basically, looking at the verbiage, things like arrange, repeat, define are a lower level of cognitive demand. But if you can move the vocabulary up to a higher one, like abstract or compare or design, create, then you can make the standard more worthwhile and create a lot more interesting projects. So if we go back to that list again, then you look at, you think about what arts you want to look at, what art area you want to do, whether it be dance, music, theater, visual, and is there a natural alignment? I know as a musician, I'm going to lean towards music and, maybe more of the performing arts. And I know as Steve is a visual arts person, he's definitely going to lean towards visual arts. And as arts educators, not only can we be specialists in our areas, but we have to be willing to kind of push outside our comfort zone. I know I don't feel as comfortable with visual arts as Steve does, and so I feel very insecure about my ability. But isn't that kind of what we're trying to push all of us as educators and children to do, is to become more comfortable with all of those forms? We don't have to be an expert to share them and to bring them into our classrooms. Look at the different standards list to find similar verbs. And I sent you what I'm looking at right now, and there are links to get to the DESE Fine Arts standards. And basically, I just spend time with them and look at them, thinking about what area would be the most comfortable for the alignment. And then here's an important aspect. Even when you're writing them on your own, put them side by side. Don't put one on top of the other, because even visually, you are not trying to put one standard in service of the other. They are equal. And that's what you want to keep in mind the whole time. So even visually, put them next to each other instead of putting the content standard and then an art standard underneath, or vice versa, because you want to constantly be thinking of them as equals. And then you use those verbs to bring them together and write one big standard. So that's a lot, and it takes time, and I'm really excited that you're here, and hopefully we'll have a good time doing this. A sidebar that I wrote down there: if something does not gel and it's just not working, don't try to force it, because one, you don't need to, if there isn't a natural alignment, it'll be contrived as it is. Two, there is probably something that will align with it better, and that's when you should collaborate and go to someone else and say, hey, what do you think of this? What could blend better with this? And just talking it out will help. And then the other aspect of that is that these lesson seeds, some will be good, some won't be as strong. One person might look at a lesson seed, say, there's nothing there, I can't see anything. Another person might get very excited and think, oh, I can do something with it. Like that thing I did last night, I wrote it, but I was like, I don't know what you could do with this, I think. And then Steve comes up with a stunt, thing. It will spark people's interest. And so trust the process, and trust that what you're doing could be something that will inspire someone else and give them something much more foundational to use. Okay, so I think since we have a small group, why don't we just go for it? I will stop talking and let you kind of think and talk about it. And we're just going to dive into one and see what happens as a group. And Steve, I showed him this one earlier, and he's like, yeah, maybe we could do something with this. It's a science standard. It can be 6th through 8th. But looking at it, develop and use a model to describe the function of a cell as a whole and ways parts of cells contribute to the function. So the question is, what is the verbs that we would be using? Well, develop.
Describe.
And describe, yeah. So I'm going to make those blue. And I also see use. Are there any other verbs, specifically verbs, that the students would be able to do? Just develop and use a model to describe the function of a cell as a whole and ways parts of cells contribute to the function. That's pretty much it. Now, how can we make this more interesting? Just off the top of your head, what are you thinking of? What subjects? By the way, I'm looking at some of the things you wrote earlier and it was great. Sorry, go ahead.
You're good. I always find that like, I think with like social studies and history standards, like drama is always kind of like my first go-to, like things just naturally seem to fit there. And I feel like with science, dance tends to be one of those things, like moving through, like, you know, creating the cell and then breaking out into parts and like being able to be part of that experience. So my initial thing is dance, but I wonder if there's a way to do like a visual art, because I'm also thinking of like, you know, Kandinsky's like circle painting. Like, is there some way to like connect, you know, what they notice about that type of painting and that type of art form with how to present it, the information that they learn and share about cells? So I don't know.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I like the art angle with like thinking about like there's certain artists that used organic shapes a lot in their work, like abstract art, but organic shapes like Miro or like you said, Kandinsky. Like I think that would be kind of a fun tie-in, like to create a diagram of a cell, but do it in the style of one of those artists would be really interesting. And likewise, like I do think about dance too and movement with that, like thinking about the cell membrane and how it's porous, like it makes me think of like a game of Red Rover or something, like trying to get through the cell membrane. I don't know, like, but yeah, like definitely both of those ideas I think could easily become a lesson seed.
I wonder if we should try the
Right.
art one, since that doesn't, it feels like the dance feels more natural. So I'm just wondering like what it would look like to play around with the art one.
I
Matt,
agree.
do you have thoughts?
So what I did yeah, anybody else have an idea?
How about show how using Photoshop and mobility, and you could have some student, you know, you don't have to have everybody doing the exact same thing at the same time. Some students may feel more comfortable actually moving around and expanding and contracting, where others are on a computer using Photoshop to put it in the mobility mode, and where they could actually show a cell expanding and growing and changing color, actually changing shape. So having different students, different groups use different art forms.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea too. It makes me think of like a real world experience too, where like if you're working in an office building, right, you have like the people that work on the tech side and then they pass it off to the next person and then they pass it off. So it's almost like if the students that developed it in the tech space and then helped guide the movement people into like, now let's take this and put it into motion. And then those people, you know, like it kind of like builds up. That's really interesting.
Yes. So what I'm thinking is let's go to the standards. But I wrote down on a piece of paper, develop and use and describe, so that I can keep those words in mind. And we're thinking of the function of the cell as a whole and ways parts of the cells contribute to the function. But also we're focusing on how students develop and use a model to describe. So those kind of things in mind. Let's look at the art standards for a moment. Now, let's see, Steve, And we have a couple artists here. We could look at the media arts and see what is there.
Yeah.
It's
Let's
true.
see.
Yeah, I kind of overlook that one sometimes, but like what you were saying about creating an animation or something, that would kind of tie into media arts.
Mm-hmm. So let's see what's there. And I think with this crowd, you've spent a lot of time here. Is this like all familiar to you guys? This kind of these lists. How many of you have spent a lot of time in these places?
Well, there's just 4 of us left here, so.
Okay. So we know these things. Let's see what we can write.
Lost a few.
I get
And we all have
overwhelmed.
been there.
I get overwhelmed online and then I have to print out the spreadsheet so I can actually look at it. Like, cause I just the endless scrolling on Desi's site just hurts my brain.
That's exactly how I was too. I like always wanted to like stay up with technology, but I'm still so old school. Like I have to have paper copies of things.
There's something that, yeah, it feels good about touching it. Okay, so let's go to like 6th through 8th grade, anywhere in there. And we have a conceive. These are great ideas. Organize and develop artistic work, our ideas and work. Refine and complete artistic work. Select, analyze, interpret. Develop and refine artistic technique and work for presentation. Well, we've got that develop word. So let's see what this has. Develop a variety of artistic design, technical, and soft skills through performing various assigned roles in producing media networks such as invention, formal techniques, production. I don't know if that really.
That's more like group work, like a group would be designing a cell somehow.
Ooh. And also it's really hard to read these things.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. Let's see, analyze various presentation formats. Analyze, I don't think we want to do analyze. And respond, I don't know. I like to go back up to the top. I always like, if we can bring it into create, I think that's always my favorite, because that's where you'll get the highest value of it. Let's see. So I'm seeing experiment with multiple approaches to produce content and components, to determine purpose and meaning in media arts productions utilizing a range of associated principles, blah, blah, blah. Or appraise how elements and components can be altered for intentional effects and audience, and refine media artwork to reflect purpose and audience. Now, that's an interesting one because you are trying to modify it, like you're altering things for an intentional effect. And that kind of hit me because of when you are, a cell and that visual, and you are manipulating a cell when you're doing this project. That kind of came out at me. Any other thoughts on this one?
Only thing, I mean, and unfortunately I don't have the media art standards in front of me. I have I have the other ones, but like if there was something about, I don't know if there's anything in there about like a sequence or like it makes me want to think of like an order of events or something, like how energy travels through the cell or something like that, like, or how a cell absorbs something. I don't know. That was just something I was I thought maybe there'd be something like that in media arts, like a sequence or telling a story arc, or I don't know, like some kind of,
That's a tricky one.
yeah, I don't know if it's even
Well,
in there, but
But the fact that it wasn't a very natural alignment makes me think maybe not this time. So let's go to, do you want to try visual arts then? Or do you want
sure,
to go for dance?
go for art,
Which one?
visual.
Art for 100.
Okay, I have, well, I highlighted one for that one. It's okay, it says combine concepts collaboratively to generate innovative ideas for creating art.
Interesting.
That was the one where I thought, oh, well, that could be used in some way to create like if you were trying to create a cell or a model of a cell somehow, or explain the function of a cell through art.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would be a good collaborative exercise because, you know, the parts of the cell, they perform different functions. And so even if you created multiple pieces of artworks that somehow work together, or
Yeah.
Could you read it off again? I'll just type it in.
sorry,
If
I hope I copied it correctly. It says it's combine concepts collaboratively to generate innovative ideas for creating art. We'll see if I can find it.
Combine concepts collaboratively to generate ideas.
Innovative ideas for creating art. And that's VA:1A.6. What is it?
Sure.
I'll see if I can.
Okay. So generate is a big word. Oh, I like this. I think
Yeah.
you're on to something. Combine.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the actual.
Okay. So let's do this. All right. So what I kind of like to do is literally copy and paste over here so that I have the vocabulary, because I'm basically going to use this language and just kind of push them together. So it's, you don't have to like reword it, just basically put it together. So you could put combine concepts collaboratively. It'll move. To develop and use a model. To develop a model.
I know
Sorry.
you said you don't normally have like one on top of the other, but is there ever times where that makes sense?
There are times that is unavoidable.
Yeah.
Like combining them, like I have, like, you try to go, you know, red blue or something like that, but sometimes like it ends up mostly red on top or mostly blue on bottom.
Yeah.
Like you can try, I think the leaning is best to roll them together.
Well, and also sometimes it'll just look like a sandwich, like it'll be red, blue, red. That's
Yeah.
happened too.
Yeah, it doesn't always happen exactly how you want it to.
Develop and use a model to generate innovative ideas for creating art that describes So combine concepts collaboratively to develop and use a model to generate innovative ideas for creating art that describes the function of a cell as a whole and ways parts of the cell contribute to the function. Because that's a lot. But what I like about this is that also the other verbiage that I like is that you are using to instead of and, like you are developing and using a model to generate innovative ideas. Or it could be you are generating innovative ideas to develop a model. You could flip it all around. But I see a lot of potential in something like that.
Yeah.
Somebody might read that and use it.
Super cool.
As you can see, this process is tedious and can be difficult. And so I appreciate that most people were like, peace out. But Maggie, I appreciate you sticking with it.
I don't
It
think
is-
they left because of you. I think they left because of prior engagements. It's not you. Don't worry.
I will say that it's definitely more fun like doing this process collaboratively, because like when I'm like in the basement on the computer, like, and we had to develop like, was it 10, we had to do 10 lesson seeds or something for that one assignment. And like, I mean, like it just broke my brain to try to do it
Totally.
by myself. But like to do it with a group of people, that's a little more fun, because then people come up with ideas that you didn't think of or angles, and it kind of like, you know, creates a bridge to something, and you're like, oh, that, okay. And that, you know, but sometimes when you're doing it by yourself, like the dendrites don't meet up, and you're just kind of like, you just get stumped with some of the standards that you're trying to roll together.
Yeah. And I think even just like in combining the two, sometimes your brain like can't jelly roll them, right? Like you're like, well, this actually makes sense on top. That's what my brain did. It was like, well, if we just put the art one on top, it kind of flows together nicely, but this is more
Cool.
combined together in a way that like having a group of people made that easier than just me thinking independently about it.
Yeah.
Which is why I really wanted to do this, to show that like, because there is that hesitation and fear of like, oh, it's like not fun and it's hard and my brain doesn't think that way. And, you know, there's all this negativity around it, but really in reality, it's like also this awesome opportunity to learn about your colleagues and talk to people in your building that maybe you don't normally talk to, and combine forces to create, you know, build off of one another. That's kind of what we did, where it's like one person said something and then it was like, oh, that sparked me to think about this. And then that sparked somebody else to think about that. So to have that opportunity to just, you know, word vomit your ideas and then reel it back into what actually is possible or what makes sense. Like our first one, there wasn't that natural connection, but we were able to kind of make that consensus together as a group versus stewing for hours by ourselves, being like, why won't it work? I want it to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that the importance of doing something like this is that it will move arts integration from being just a fun enhancement into something that is undeniably effective and useful. And so I think that's why I am willing to put myself through this. Because yeah, it's not that bad with a group of people. And when it all comes together, you're like, wow, yeah, there might be something there. And we also created some that were complete duds, but it's just, you know, trial and error, just as the creative process is. And if people are willing to put in the work for this, and we can give it to other educators and they can come up with these fun ideas, it will push us to a new level, I think, of arts integration, not only in our state, but just everywhere. And that's something that I'd really love to see. And in my own personal teaching too.
I want to thank you guys for your time and all your effort in preparing for this, and for sharing your knowledge with us. And I think it's okay if we wrap it up just a few minutes early. And again, thank you, Katie and Stephen, so much for all your hard work and have a great end of your year.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, guys.